Hi, I'm Femi OK and you're in the stream. Today, allegations of discrimination, hate crimes and fatal beatings. Northeastern Indians living in New Delhi claim that this is their reality. But why? Our digital producer, as you know, is Malika Bilal. She's looking out for your live feedback. Are we getting much from India right now?
We are, and that would be an understatement.
Okay.
We're getting a lot from India, which is always great. And
Right.
asking why these attacks happen, we're actually hearing from people all across the country. And many of them, like Danish, who tweeted into the stream, say it's a mixture of ignorance and discrimination. So we'll delve into the why in today's show. Well, we can't do it without you, though. So you can tweet us your thoughts on this topic with hashtag AJStream.
My name is Roman Dobrokhotov. I'm independent journalist and political activist, and I'm in the stream.
Indians from northeastern states like Assam, Mizoram and also Manipur who have moved across the country say that they are being harassed and at times even killed because of who they are. Many believe the geographical divide, East Asian facial features and cultural differences are leading factors for the tension. The national government says that it has taken a series of steps to address the problem following the fatal beating of northeasterner Nido Taniam in January. Indian Prime Minister Narendra Modi called the act shameful. Have a listen to a little bit of his speech aired on ABP News.
On my part, I already said that it is a shameful incident. It is a sad incident. I offer my prayers for the boy, his parents and his family. I had met the students of Northeast in Delhi a few days back. I assured them that the whole nation is with you. This incident is the result of collapse of governance in Delhi.
A recent report claims that almost 86% of northeastern Indians have faced some sort of racial discrimination. So what can be done about this? To help us talk about this problem, on Skype we have in Assam, India, Nilam Datta. He's chairman of the Unified People's Movement. Playwright Swath Ranajam is a Bangalore-based activist from Manipur, that's a state in northeastern India. And in New York, we have Mitra Kalita. She's the ideas editor at Quartz News Outlet. I also should say that we did reach out to the national government, but they were unable to join the program live. So to our other guests, it's great to have you all here on board. So, Mitra, first of all, let's talk a few stereotypes. You're a northeasterner. What do other Indians think and say about you?
So for years, I think they didn't even know where I was from. I was raised outside of India, and I feel like the question I've been asked throughout my life is, Assam, where is that? So really it was a basic lack of awareness of geography. In more recent years, I think the stereotype has evolved into Northeasterners working in service sectors such as call centers, hospitality, hotels, restaurants, etc.
Right. So they think that you're what then? They just don't have a clue that you're even Indian. Is that the
That's
main
correct,
stereotype?
right? So this is very much the global Indian construction, but I
Yeah.
think Indians themselves in India have even started to embrace this, right? I didn't grow up watching Bollywood movies because my parents aren't Hindi speaking. They speak Hindi, but it's their third or fourth language, and so I think that we've tried to create what it is to be Indian, which in some ways is a function of globalization and kind of whitewashing the definition of that. And certainly it has not included Northeasterners in the expansive definition of what it is to be Indian.
Mitra's being very polite right now. While she's being very polite, let me just show you some geography here, because she's talking about geography. So up here, I'm going to do a little Google fly through. Up here, this is China, and then this down here is India, obviously. I'm going a little bit closer because I'm going to take you up to the northeastern states, and Assam in particular, which is the area that we're talking about. And here we are. This is the northeastern part of India, so very close, just south of China. And there is a thing that people do about, I don't know, a way that you look schwa. Can you help us out with that? Yes. In terms of the people from this area in Assam are not looking, I heard the critique that, well, if you're based in the northeast, you're not like a Indian that's in the rest of India. What is this? Is there a typical Indian look?
Well, there has all. I mean, like I think because of Bollywood, etc., there has been this assertion of a typical Indian look, which is what has happened with the Mary Kom film also, where Priyanka Chopra is a typical Indian look, while
Sure.
I
And Mary Kom is
yeah,
a very
don't have the
famous.
typical Indian.
Mary Kom is a very famous athlete. She's a boxer in she's from the
Yeah.
Northeast, so she's very like a big celebrity.
Yeah.
Yeah, so she's a big
And
celebrity.
she's from my state, Manipur. Yeah.
Yeah.
And she's an Olympics medal winner also.
Okay, Malika, go ahead.
Well, that's one of the things that I am seeing online. It's about the look. And this is what we're hearing from Indians who are not in the Northeast. Sai writes in, he says, often people from the Northeast are mistaken for Chinese or Japanese. He says their features make Northeastern people stand out and hence they're subjugated. And Mitra, I want you to pick up on that. But before you do, I want to share one more stereotype that we saw from people. And they say that this is prevalent. This is Anshuman. He says, in too many instances, especially, the Northeastern girls are labeled as, he writes, sluts and loose because they have male friends. He says they are subjected to eve teasing, stalking, trying to grope them, trying to inappropriately touch them. Where does this come from? And has this been an experience that you can relate to?
Very much so. So at the outset, I'd like to say that one of the strongest identifications of Northeast women is that we are incredibly strong. There have been decades of unrest in the region, and women actually have led a lot of the opposition. They've protested. It's an outwardly, unlike perhaps some other parts of India, women from the Northeast are indeed outspoken, and I think that's something to be very proud of and to embrace. You also have a generation, I mean, we can get into the economics of the Northeast, but it is geographically isolated, but also economically isolated. And as in so many cultures, women are the ones who are left to figure out how to earn livelihoods. And so a strong working culture among women of the Northeast. And I think you're seeing that now with the migration. So what you've seen in India is about 400,000 Northeasterners, I think, have left in search of better opportunities for cities over the last 5 years, 5 or 10 years. I'm sorry, I'm not exactly clear on the statistic. And so you have a lot of men and women who are seeking opportunities, whether the idea of a woman emigrating from her house alone subjects her to being loose or sexually objectified. I think we've seen that historically around the world,
So
inaccurately.
Sure. So Nilim, I'm just showing everybody a headline here. 2 Nagaland men assaulted in Gurgaon, hair forcibly cut. And then there's the young man that we talked about in the introduction. And this is Nido Taniam. And he was beaten to death in January. So we're not just talking about people saying, oh, you look a little bit different. We're talking about actual violence. What have you experienced?
For most part, I somehow do not fit into the stereotypical Northeastern look of, you know, very mongoloid features. So I thought this is something I had most of the time kept on hearing from others till I had my own experience. This was quite when I was quite new in Delhi when I had moved in. I had been there for years, coming in, you know, and going back, but I did not live there initially. But this was just happened after I had moved to Delhi and started living there. And I was living with my partner who's Kashmiri, was a Kashmiri. And one fine afternoon, I have the Delhi police coming and knocking on my doors. Initially, they said that they just wanted to verify my antecedents and all. And after that, we were nearly kept under house arrest for 4 hours and questioned as if, you know, we were terrorists. Till I had to call up senior police officials back in my state, get in touch with senior home ministry officials, and only then they backed off. Sure. And, you know, I was a working professional, pretty well connected, and when this had happened to me, I can imagine what students facing this has to go through, you know. And all the reason was that I was from the Northeast, and the lady who was with me she was from Kashmir, and this was like 2 and 2 put together and working out to 7 and saying that, okay, there's something must be going on, because both Kashmir and Northeast has this history.
Right,
and
confidently
going back 6 decades.
And confidently, can you confidently say, I know the reason the police came here was not because someone had a grudge against me, was because somebody knew that I was from the Northeast. How do you know that?
Absolutely, absolutely, because there couldn't have been any other way at all, because I was new in the neighbor, number one.
Right.
I had kept very, because of work, there is no partying or anything of that sort that, any neighbors would have had any objections to. There were not too many people going in and coming out of my house that somebody would have any objection to. There was not even an altercation with anyone.
Sure. All right.
And the police was straightway came down, say that, okay, we just wanted to ask you a few questions.
Okay.
And then, it's not just junior police official, a DCP, a deputy commissioner rank person came down unquestioned. If this is not discrimination, what is? And when they left apologizing, say that, okay, we are very sorry, but this is not what we thought it was.
All right, Malika.
So what do you take out of that?
Neelam, as you're sharing your story, we're also seeing others online. I want to share this one from Danish, who says, I have firsthand experience of 2 cops talking amongst themselves about people from the Northeast and using what he says, the C word, which is a derogatory term for people from the Northeast. There's also a tweet here from Richard Swar, and I'll read this one out. He says, there's an institutionalized racism too. For example, at the Taj Mahal, I was asked to produce an identity card to prove that I am Indian. So Swar, do you believe that this is institutionalized? Because I know you have your own story, something that happened after a traffic collision. Can you tell us about that?
Yeah, I agree with Richard also. And going back to my personal incident, because the difference between Bangalore, because I've also lived in Delhi as a student, and then in Bangalore I work here as a professional theatre practitioner. And what I faced in Delhi personally were more microaggressions on the street, which will be like the naming and shaming, which was the C word, which is, okay, let's speak about it. It's deeply entrenched in Delhi to talk about chinky, which is the term that is used for all of us people who come from the Northeast, as well as the Tibetans, the Nepalis, the people from the Darjeelings. And then in Bangalore, what happened is that this one happened in 2012 in December, when I had stopped my car at a red signal and a motorcyclist bashed into my car from the backside, and then there was a very nasty kind of an altercation that happened, and then I had approached a police constable who was on the road to help me out, but instead of helping me out, the police constable physically assaulted me 3-4 times, and then a mob of around 40 men gathered who sexually harassed me, criminally intimidated me, and the police constable did nothing. In fact, he instigated it, and I filed an FIR, one against the motor accident and against the various men who had sexually harassed me as well as intimidated me, including the police constable. Now, what has happened is that, very interestingly, the police constable filed a counter complaint against me, saying that I was the one who was involved in the physical assault. And this is a tactic that the police use often against women in India, and this is a very, very worrying tactic. And then the response from the traffic
So Swar, do you think it's more because you're a woman or because you're a woman from the Northeast?
Both of them. One is that women drivers on the streets and urban spaces in India face lots of hostility, and then a woman from the Northeast faced another level of hostility, which cannot be denied at all. So we are talking about intersectional violence here.
Right. All right. Swab mentioned Mary Kom, who in India is famous. She's a famous Northeastern athlete, and you were talking about her recently, and I just want to actually show the conversation that we had with her just a few hours ago when we were talking about this discrimination between the Northeast and the rest of India. This is what she told us.
Of course, I'm not pure Indian. We are our faces look like Chinese, Japanese, Thailand. Well, my heart is fully Indian, so I hope that in the future they will be not doing any kind of this discrimination. And yes, I do that. I really believe that they will do it after coming biopic. people more be, the mindset will be changed.
So Mary Com has her own Bollywood movie, which is a sign of success, definitely in India, if you actually make it into a movie. But this is heartbreaking, Mitra, the idea that just because you look different, that the rest of your countrymen, your countrywomen will treat you differently. If you try to work out why that is, what is it? Is it something about the psyche of Indians that are uncomfortable with the differences amongst the whole continent of India, subcontinent of India?
So I think you can look at the rest of India's reaction and see there's no shortage of tensions among caste and religion, and there certainly have been other incidents of whether it's racism or religious discrimination, and India, unfortunately, is no stranger to that. There's also this internal ambivalence, though, in the Northeast themselves of how much they want to be Indian, and I think in recent years, just by virtue of Northeast voting with its feet and seeing opportunity in these cosmopolitan centers, they really are trying to join the Indian economic story, right? To kind of have some of those riches and seek opportunities. But then there's also the internal, I mean, these are states that have all had several unrests, they've had militancy, they've had separatist movements, and even the question mark of do they really want to be Indian? And I hate to kind of air our own dirty laundry, but even among the seven sisters of the Northeast, there's a lot of discrimination from the mainland Assamese against folks from Nagaland and from Manipur.
So Mitra, the seven sisters are the seven, it's a nickname for the seven states there. Okay, so do you think it's the violence that's come out of that region?
No, it's actually 8 states. I just want to, it's actually 8 states now because Sikkim has also
We've got an extra sister there in the mix. All right, Malika, my stream sister.
Well, I love that you brought up Mary Com, and of course online people are talking about her. W.A. Laskar says Mary Com should be played by a Northeastern actor. The film also betrays the ignorance of Bollywood about Northeast, and of course the actress that will be playing her, or that is playing her in the movie that came out last month, is Priyanka Chopra. But Neelam, there's a tweet here that I want to go to that talks about where this ignorance comes from. Humanist says it's a lack of proper socialization. We're not taught the Northeastern history in schools. Kids don't get to meet people of diverse cultures. Is there an education on the history of the entire country? Do you think in mainland India?
I don't think so. That can you hear me?
Yes.
Yeah.
I don't think the history of the Northeast people are taught elsewhere. In fact, we should be learning more about it, about all other regions as well. There is monumental ignorance about Northeast, and also because this region, parts of this region had become part of India only during the colonial times. Even British officers posted in what is Mizoram now, when they were going back to their headquarters in Kolkata, colonial headquarters in Kolkata, used to write their dispatches saying that going back to India. What do you mean? This means that you were outside India at that point of time. And I'm talking about barely 100 years, of a time barely 100 years ago. So this bridge about the Northeasterners being part of the Indian psyche or the imagination has not yet sunk in to many of the people. Mostly because, the reasons are complex.
Right.
That on one side you have had these secessionist insurgencies in the Northeast, resisting the Indian nation state. Because I have had major debates with people who have been supporting
Neelam, take a pause for a moment, because I want to share something with you. This is Subramanian Swamy. He's the chairman of the Committee for Strategic Action for the BJ Party, which is the ruling party in India. We spoke to him earlier and asked him about this idea of discrimination and what is the government actually doing, and this is what he said.
For that also we have a very strong law, and after the Delhi incidents, stronger law was brought in. And now I think there have been those who, wherever there has been racial attacks, the police has managed to catch the culprits. None of these are unsolved murders.
So he says you have laws in India, and all the cases of attacks and violence have been solved. Is that enough, Neelam?
No, definitely not enough. And this is hypocrisy. Zero hypocrisy, because just the other day when the Chinese president was visiting India on a state visit, Northeasterners were barred from his presence because China has a claim on part of Northeast territory, Arunachal, and just because, this might displease the Chinese president, Northeasterners were barred from his presence. We have a Minister of State for Home, Mr. Rijiju, who is from the Northeast, but he was out of India at that point of time. There was nobody who was from the Northeast.
No one representing the Northeast.
No, and this treatment, regardless of whatever may be said by Subramanian Swamy, what you are doing is that sending the signal by your actions that Northeasterners are not equal citizens.
Right.
I find it insulting. And this actually gives others the idea that, okay, they can get away with any kind of discrimination against Northeast.
So we have three northeasterners from northeastern parts of India. We have Nilam, we have Swa, we have Mitra. This conversation is not over yet. We are taking them to the post show at stream.aljazeera.com. If you have something that you want to add to this conversation, you can tweet Malika, #AJStream. But first, here she is with some of the other stories that we're following on the stream.
Military fashion is our first lead. Israeli soldiers are reportedly modeling for army-inspired fashion line MKTL. Have a look.
In the spirit of this elite unit, we created MTKL apparel with the intention of launching the sexiest and sharpest military-inspired streetwear the world has ever seen.
It's all part of MKTL's crowdsourced funding initiative. Contributors who give $25 or more will receive what they say is the world's first Israeli girl army calendar, featuring the chosen amongst the chosen people. But not everyone is a fan. Susan Disick on Facebook writes, "Bloodshed, death, violence, sorry. It's not fashionable, nor beautiful, nor enviable." We now turn to Mexico, where many online are calling for the resignation of the country's president. Using a hashtag that translates to "I demand your resignation, Enrique Peña Nieto," Mexicans are listing reasons why they want him to step down. Gabby tweets, "Because the people did not choose poverty, unemployment, and disappearances." Some referred to the cover of Time magazine from earlier this year, arguing the president is actually doing the opposite of saving Mexico. Patty writes, "This is what your saving Mexico looks like today," showing a meme with words like poverty, fraud, and murders over the president's face. Many specifically criticized the president's handling of the disappearance of 43 students from a school in Mexico's southwest last month. Javi tweets, "They took them alive, we want them alive." We've rounded up that discussion on our website. You can check it out and share your thoughts at stream.aljazeera.com. Femi?
Thank you very much. There is a movie called Chak D, in a line, in a sentence, Mitra. Tell us about Chak D.
So Chak De is, I think,
the
Chak
film. Of course.
Oh, Chak De is the film that probably brought the issue of the harassment that Northeasterners face really into the mainstream, into the limelight. There are two Northeasterners on that team.
Yes.
They get into a fight at McDonald's.
Right,
am I setting you up here?
Yeah, we're setting up. Here we go. Let's play the scene.
Come on, join us, babes. Hey, come on. She's red hot, yeah. Hey, baby. Hey.
Oh, okay. What happens next? You'll find out. Stream.aljazeera.com. We are taking all of our guests and our conversation about Northeasterners and discrimination in India to the post show. Let me tell you about our next AJ stream, though. We move from India to Spain. A binding referendum for Catalonian independence has been called off. But is that the end of the separatist movement? We'll speak to Catalonians to see what they think on the next AJ stream. Until then, thanks for watching. See you online. Hello again, this is the Stream's online post show. We're continuing our discussion on discrimination against Indians from the Northeast. So still with us, we have Nilam Datta. He's chairman of the Unified People's Movement. Swar Pranajam is a playwright and Bengaluru-based activist from the northeastern state of Manipur. And Mitra Kalita is the ideas editor at Quartz News Outlet. Mitra, I was mean to you because we always love talking about Bollywood movies, and I was like, just in a nutshell, tell us about this movie. Why is it such, or why was it, Chuck Day, why was that such a big deal?
I think not just because the men were whistling, but really because of the reaction. And significantly, if you saw, it was the Punjabi girl that stepped up and stepped to those two men and defended the women from the Northeast. And I think that's a really telling part of what it's going to take to prevent this type of harassment, is that the rest of India really needs to embrace these folks as their own.
And Shwar, that scene in a movie, sometimes movies exaggerate, but are you feeling that resonates with your experience as a northeastern woman? Do you find that every day? I mean, you told us that awful story about what happened to you. Is that your everyday experience?
I would say, yeah, like when I was a student in Delhi, that would have been my everyday experience, because the naming and shaming as well as the microaggressions that you face, racist microaggressions that you face, was much more entrenched in Delhi.
Yeah.
And
why do you think that is? What is it about Delhi that makes this a problem, particularly in Delhi?
I think various reasons. One is because the migration of the Northeast community members to Delhi have been happening for a number of decades, which is like lesser compared to Bangalore. And also, I think it's also related to the foundational violence of how the Northeast became to be part of India also, because this is something that we need to be talking more often about, the historical depth of how Northeast became the part of Indian Union. And if you look to certain lines that were said by a person like Sardar Vallabhbhai Patel, who said that, you know, we do not trust that.
And he is explaining for our international audience.
Sorry?
Yes, explain. You just name dropped. Just explain that for our international audience. That person's significance.
Yeah, so Sardar Vallabhbhai Patel was actually the architect who was
first home minister.
Yeah, and also the merger of different princely kingdoms of the Northeast was envisioned by him and then carried out by him.
All right, thank you.
Yeah.
Yeah, carry on. I was only trying to get a little bit of notes so I could keep up with you. And you were making what point?
So there is something that he said. Sorry, yeah, Nilam, you were saying something?
Just sorry for interrupting you, but the other point I just wanted to make was that there is this deeply embedded patriarchy and misogyny that is very well known in the culture prevalent in Delhi, and the ones who pick on the women from Northeast, they also know that, you know, these students and all, they're far away from their home, so there are several factors which plays into it.
Right. This is complicated because we've got Northeast Indians who sometimes you can tell that they come from the Northeast because they have very distinct features. You've got a background historically where some northeastern states want to be separate from India, and some violence as well, and discrimination. So I'm just thinking, like, how do you even start to address that? Let me show you one thing I was looking at here. This is a kick racism out of Indian football. Sad to hear of discrimination against Northeast Indians in India. And then here's an advert here, just advocating for a diversity in football. Malika, what's our community wanting to talk about?
Well, they're picking up on something that Swar mentioned earlier, and she says that there is a historical debt and that we need to understand that before we can even get to the bottom of this. Right. So, Mitra, I want to read you two tweets we got here on that historical debt, really. W.A. Laskar says, yes, India needs to enact an anti-racist law, but first it needs to repeal racist laws like AFSPA, and that's the Armed Forces Special Powers Act that gives Indian soldiers special immunity in conflict areas, quote unquote. So, Mitra, can you explain what that has to do with the Northeast?
Sure. So this is sort of the army states that have been created and the exertion of the Indian state in some of these disputed territories. The law that's referenced is actually a big subject of a current Bollywood movie called Hyder that's about Kashmir. But watching it, I really did feel like you could substitute Kashmir for Assam, and many of the themes are indeed similar. The tweet about the hate crimes is interesting because there's been no shortage of examining the spate of hate crimes over the last few years in Delhi and Bangalore. And a commission actually came out in July with a series of recommendations, which is ironically before this more recent spate of incidents, saying it was time to classify crimes against Northeasterners indeed as hate crimes.
All right, let me show you. So this is ironic. This is from Quartz Magazine and Network that Mitra works for. So we're talking about how Mary Kom is this wonderful role model for Northeasterners, but she is being played by a woman who is not from the Northeast, which you actually pointed out quite nicely and suggested some other people, some other actresses who may well have been able to play it. So what is this even saying, where you have this wonderful icon, this model of this is what a Northeasterner is, none of the stereotypes, and yet she's played by a Punjabi woman who had to then be made to look like she was from the Northeast? Are we in really deep, deep trouble here, Neelam?
I think there's some of these stereotypes need to be shattered.
Yeah.
And
how does that happen?
It can't be done by anybody else. You know.
All right.
Our earlier generations had problem with India. You know, their response was they wanted to secede. I don't belong to the generation. You know, my stand has been very clear from the beginning.
Yeah.
I'm an Indian by choice, not just by the accident of my birth within the territory which it claims.
Sure. Right.
I'm an equal citizen, and this is something somebody who has a problem better accept.
Right.
You know, so I think the best way to address is that we have equal stake or equal claim on Delhi. Doesn't matter whether I may be from Assam, I may be from Manipur, but people better accept the fact that we have equal claims on Delhi, and we are going to be around, and we are going to lead this country, and they better get used to it.
I like that. Interesting. All right, Malika, the community, and then that's the last word.
Well, I like that too. And really this last word that I'm going to give from our community echoes, Neelam, what you just said. So I'd like all of our guests to have a listen to this.
Hi, this is Dr. Sugata Bhattacharjee. I live in New Hampshire, but I'm from Tripura, in northeast state of India. And every time I hear a news about something bad happening to a person in northeast, it breaks my heart. So everybody in India and around the world, we look different, but we are one. We are Indians, and we are very much part of the entire nation of India. Thank you.
Beautifully said.
All right, indeed. I can't improve on that, so I won't. Thank you to Neelam, to Shwa and to Mitra for being part of this conversation. Moving on to our next AJ stream, we move from India to Spain. A binding referendum for Catalonian independence has been called off, but is that the end of the separatist movement? We'll speak to Catalonians to see what they think. That's on the next AJ stream. Until then, I'll see you online. Thanks for watching.